Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, welcome to the August 13th, 2020 Public Works Committee meeting. Item 1B, roll call, please.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
And Chairman Wiggy.
Here.
All present.
All right, item 2A, approval and amendment of the agenda. Any changes or issues with the agenda from anybody?
Nope.
Good by acclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have no announcements, appointments, proclamations, recognitions. Item 4A, citizen comment.
Let me check. Oh, there's Bola. Hold on just a second. Is there anyone in the public that would like to comment? No.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to item 5, reports of the committee chair and alderman. So just for my report, so I'm grateful to Mayor Denman for giving me the opportunity to take on public works. I'm very grateful that Steve has remained on the board, even though taking on the public safety role, because I really respect Steve's experience and wisdom. And I'm also glad that Jeff Gould has joined us. And so I think we have a great board, and Nancy is here. So she hasn't had enough sewer lateral conversations yet, honestly. So we're gonna take care of it this year. For me personally, I think we've made great progress as a city in the last year or so on sustainability things, and I think I'm really looking forward to Public Works helping to continue doing that as we move it forward. So that's all I have. Alderman Gould.
I appreciate being appointed to the board. I look forward to getting in and learning a lot about the stuff that the committee takes on before it goes to the Board of Aldermen. And it was definitely one of my main pieces of motivation for running was making sure that Public Works continues to evolve and we make this as good as we can. So I appreciate being on it and look forward to it.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Alderman Lockmiller.
Well, I'm happy that you're happy to be the new chairman. So it's always great. I'd just like to thank all staff for the great, how quickly they were able to clean up the flood damage we had down along Manchester Road and also in Hanley Industrial Court. So thanks for your efforts. Thank you.
Alderwoman Tice.
After all that, I feel like I should have a report, but I don't. No.
All right, move to item 6, city administrator report. Well, looks like you have a flooding.
Yes, in your board packets, I provide an update on staff efforts regarding the flooding from Sunday night, Monday, and Wednesday. And to put it in perspective, and I'll be brief, what we have experienced is more rainfall than what our pipes can manage. We had a meeting yesterday with Phil Blond with Jacobs Engineering and J.R. Landeck with TWM, just so that they could share their technical expertise so that we're better able to explain to the residents that with this kind of rainfall that seem to occur more often than not, the size of the pipes that we have are just not sufficient for that kind of rainstorm. Also, one never builds or installs pipes that can manage that amount of rainfall. So as we begin to explain or continue to explain what happened to our residents, hopefully we're providing you information so that they can keep that in perspective. So that's my update.
Any questions from the board?
I got one. Paula, where are we at on the OMCI? Did their board approve turning that tax back on? And can we use that in some of these areas where we had these problems?
Yes, so we need to follow up with our contact with MSD. And Dan, if you want to unmute yourself. We were hoping to hear when their board would approve it, and then our plan would be to bring this to Public Works at the September meeting for approval the survey that we're doing right now, asking property owners to identify the flood experience that they had over the last 3 days will be useful to the board and to this committee in prioritizing projects for next year. So that's what we're hoping to do. Dan, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just that the OMCI, the deadline is October 1st of this year for a letter of intent. And basically that explains our position that yes, we do want to participate, and yes, we do want that money when they start collecting it. I'll follow up, see if they actually had their board meeting. It should have already occurred in like July. And then the taxes would start in 2021. And then it's basically like a bank account where we wouldn't have to spend it right away. We could accumulate a balance, or you could spend down the amount that's in the account. Whatever they collect in 21 could be spent in 21 for, projects related to erosion, projects related to new sewers. The only thing you can't spend it for, I believe, were like your MS4, which is like our permits and stuff like that. We can't spend it on that, but a master sewer or master stormwater plan, you could spend it on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I do have a question, Bullet. So if size of the pipes are the issue that is stated, I would imagine some people would say then, even if we do, flood mitigation work along Deer Creek and to fix the flooding issue, are we saying that the size of the pipes could create a flooding situation like that even after the flood mitigation work in Deer Creek?
We are enlarging the, am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
You're on mute now.
Okay, sorry. In talking to JR, we are enlarging the size of the pipes where the Brentwood Bound project is concerned. We are enlarging the size of the pipes along Dorothy Avenue. MoDOT is also in areas where they can, without increasing the cost to the budget of this project significantly, are also putting in storm inlets along Manchester Road. Leading up to the tunnel, we are also going to be putting pipes underneath Manchester Road as well. So, but if we have a situation where we're getting, 3 to 5 inches of rain in an hour, I don't believe that we've been authorized to design pipes that can withhold that kind of rainstorm. Does that answer your question?
It does. I mean, I'd like to hear that the pipes that will be along, the new pipes that will be installed along Manchester Road and some of the other areas that we're working on will be large enough to accommodate the water more, and direct it to the places where we want it to be, so that it stays away from the businesses and homeowners. I'm not sure I'm hearing that though.
But that's what we're doing. But if we have the kind of rainfall that we had on Sunday, on Monday, and Wednesday, we are not designing pipes to withhold that kind of rainstorm. Those are anomalies.
Okay. I mean, those are the rain events that we have flooding for. So, and have been for 100 years. Those are the ones that caused the flooding. I was under the assumption that most of it was due to Deer Creek and Black Creek and most of the water that
So the question you're not asking me is what is the design along Deer Creek that will allow it to hold more water? So that's a separate question that answers what I think you're really asking. Because right now, the reason why Deer Creek overflows its banks is because of obstructions, because of development along the creek bed. And what we're trying to do with the property acquisition is to mitigate all that.
Okay.
Nancy, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, I have one. I think it's right along what Jeff was asking. I mean, I guess I've had residents asking me, if that happened when Brentwood Bound is done, would Manchester flood? So I still don't know how to answer that based on that previous conversation about the pipes under and the clearing of that. So do we have a sense on that?
I want to think about that. Yes.
What about, you know, when we first started this, we had them go back and they were able to take the model with the significant rain events that had happened in the past. And I assume that is not a significant issue, significant effort for them to do. I assume it's the amount of rainfall coming in or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would be, and I don't want to unilaterally direct this, but, you know, would it be worth having them run this latest thing through the Brentwood Bound to see what happens as maybe just a sanity check? Because it would be terrible if we finish Brentwood Bound and 2 months later it floods.
I can have a conversation with them and bring back, if it doesn't require a lot of work, I'm sure they could answer. This is a technical question. I'm not an engineer. So I think that we should be able to get them to answer that, and maybe I can even bring that to the board on Monday during the Brentwood Bound update.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are you asking about an intensity? I guess that's what you're actually asking, like how many inches per hour could the new design support until it becomes inundated, and then even it won't work? You know, because I looked up the at St. Louis International Airport, you know, Lambert, the Weather Center said that actually was a record for August 9th, 2020. 8.7 inches was what their rain gauge read. So that's a one-day record for August for many, many decades. You know, this goes all the way back over 100 years ago, that when they collected records, you know, back in the teens. And then the other one, of course, was just last year, wettest day, July 22nd, 2019. That was 12.1 inches in a 24-hour period. So it's kind of crazy the amount of rainfall in 24 hours, you know, 12 inches. And especially if it falls in a short duration, you know, there's only so much you can cram in there, and it has to go somewhere. But I think that's what you're asking, is the intensity. What is the design's intensity? How long will it take? You know,
I think it's simpler than that, because the model they had, the flood model, showed, you know, they went back through the previous events, the every 16 months with floods, and showed that, you know, none of those events would flood Manchester.
Correct.
That was the conclusion I took away from it. So could they take the event of Sunday and I guess Monday, Tuesday, and put that into the model and see what happens? Because I think that would be really good to show residents if we have that to say, here's what new Brentwood Bound done Manchester would look like if, you know, if that happens again. Maybe it's not value added. I guess I'm open to the board if we don't want to do that.
So that will be some, that will require them spending money, so this is a completely different task order. So I would like the entire board to direct us to spend that kind of money. It probably won't be significant, but it would be an amendment to their current task order.
Alderwoman Parker Tice.
So I have a question about the Clomar. So the Clomar just says, is it a certain year? You think I would know it well, but is it a certain year flood, like 100-year flood, or what does that sort of, guarantees the wrong word, but what do they certify? Certify is the wrong word too, but what do they say in the Clomar that we are fixing?
If the current design is implemented, then we would be able to eliminate pooling and flooding along Manchester Road. So those would be the 100-year events. That's in my opinion what the Clomar is stating.
Anything else, Nancy?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Steve.
Well, I just add, yeah, I thought that Clomar would just redraw that 100-year flood line. And what we wanted to see done was that pulled south of Manchester Road before we move forward, and it did. So based on, I guess it was the engineers, what do you call those guys down there? Oh, I can't remember. But anyhow, whoever signed off on that, FEMA, I guess it was.
FEMA, yeah.
I mean, they basically said that they would move that line based on what we do down in Brentwood Bound.
Chairman Waggy.
Yeah, Lisa.
So I just wanted to add, I'm kind of more, I guess, with Steve's line of thinking in terms of CLOMAR again. What that acronym means is it's a conditional letter map amendment. So yes, it's basically after all the flood mitigation work is done, it's going to redraw this. The FEMA map is going to look different after post-flood mitigation than it does now. So the benefits again are how that boundary does shift. So now there'll be a lot of new area now that is currently restricted by what you can do either in the 100-year floodplain or the 500-year floodway, that once those maps are redrawn, those areas won't have those same restrictions. So I don't know if anybody again could ever 100% guarantee that there would never be any spot along Manchester that would ever get flooded again. Although I certainly understand, your questions tonight and everything, but that is the benefit to the flood mitigation, and that's really the goal of the project. So I don't know if that helps or not. But.
Yeah, that helps. Okay, any more questions from anybody? Okay, let's move on to item 7, the department reports. So, Public Works.
I just had a short report. There's an MSD virtual project meeting that's scheduled for next week. It's actually on the 18th at 4 p.m. So you can either register online like I did, or you can dial in the day of the meeting. But basically it's to talk about, there's new storm sewer and also sanitary sewer that's proposed on Bridgeport, White, and Rosalie. The larger diameter pipe's going to run north and south through that alleyway. It'll affect City Hall because it actually goes between the post office and the empty parcel to the east of the post office down the alley. And it intercepts a large diameter, or actually not diameter, it's a rectangular box that runs through the parking lot of City Hall and cuts over to Eulalie. So basically by adding this large diameter storm sewer, it's 1,800 feet, anywhere from 15-inch to 30-inch diameter. So that's significant hydraulic capacity you'll be picking up. So in probably 2021, whenever it's completed, or 2022, when it's completed, you should see less flooding along Bridgeport or Rosalie. I don't know how much they receive, if they receive any, but it'll help shuttle some of the water from the north down to the south, go into that large diameter box, and then it takes it down to River de Pere. So if anybody's got any questions that lives in the area, they can ask them. I know there's whenever I register it online, you can ask your question in advance so that they'll prepare an answer for you. I just want to know how long our parking lot would be torn up, because it will affect parking and how people do business at City Hall and the library.
Okay, any questions for Dan?
All right.
Hey, Dan, I do have one.
Yeah.
Do we have any visibility of when the other projects, I mean, this meeting's great, but some of the other, specifically I'm talking about Douglas Court, when they're going to dig that up, I'll be honest. Do we have any clue when they're going to start that? Or any way
I
of
don't,
knowing?
but I can ask them, since I've got a contact there. I could just, they have a project number, usually it's a 5-digit code, and we could just ask for, quarterly updates, or ask for an update now for next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7B, Parks and Rec.
Yeah, I have a couple reports. I'll start with the flooding one, the one that just got added today. We were asked just to kind of give you guys a quick update of the damage around the city, and primarily for me in the park system. I won't belabor it too much. Obviously, we got a lot of water. Brentwood Park was sustained the most flooding damage. We, by a mark on the restroom building, had over 6 feet of water in Brentwood Park on Sunday. So it got to cause damage to temporary fencing by the place. Brentwood 4 completely. It got into the press box, so it got up to the press box. Bundles of wood from Brentwood Forest ripped through their fence and kind of floated into Brentwood Park. So it was a sight in the morning to see. So staff has been busy cleaning that up. We thought we might be able to get softball in last night until the rain came. We thought we might be able to get it again in today till the rain came. So staff is hoping at least to get fields ready for tomorrow on the weekend. Memorial Park was probably the other big one, the second big one. And that was kind of the first time I have seen, it's the second time I've seen water in Memorial Park. So we had enough water where we had debris in the large pavilion number 1, which also means it got up to the playground, the main playground. So it obviously got up really high there too. We had some picnic tables float away on us, one getting into the natural area of Memorial Park. So that was kind of fun. And beyond that, we're just cleaning that up. Hanley Park, we had the dog park was the largest area of concern. The dog agility pieces both got moved. So they moved from their current location, basically were thrown up against the fence. So again, enough force in Hanley Park to move those things. And then at Northwest Park, this is kind of the fun we had, the following debris, 30 pallets, some tires, a truck bed liner, chairs and debris all against the dog park fence. So staff's been busy trying to get that all cleaned up. We think we got most of it done besides Brentwood. We'll work through Brentwood tonight or tomorrow and hopefully get it done. If not, we'll finish it up next week. It did kind of delay mowing. So if you notice grass a little bit higher, it's because staff's been cleaning everything else up. We'll catch up on mowing next week. So that's a quick update on the flood. Any questions there?
How are we going to look for Friday night and the Beatles tribute band?
I hate to mention this, Alderman Lockmuir, but that's been canceled. The new COVID restrictions.
I didn't see the memo. Sorry.
Yeah, we've put that out a few places. Sorry about that. We were looking maybe, because the main concern for that was that they reduced gathering sizes to 50 people. So we'd have to, including staff and the band, so we'd only be able to have really about 45 people out on that field. And for a very costly band, it wasn't worth it. So
good. All right, thank you.
I'll try again, hopefully.
Eric, I have one question about Rogers Parkway, where I guess MSD was doing the digging. There's that big mound that's just left. Is that on them to come back and
yeah, we've
fix,
talked to them about that. They expect it to settle at some point. I think after this past week, if it's not going to settle, we can get them come back out and get them to properly grade that. But typically, you leave, and Dan can confirm this, you can leave a little bit of a hump for settling.
Right, but this is about
they overdid
2 feet
it.
up and
yeah, exactly. But they did want
growing lots of weeds.
Yeah, they wanted to see it settle a little bit, so we'll get them back out there.
Okay.
So my second report is about the Heights Cooperative Payment. We've kind of talked about this the last few years. We did get their invoice for 2020, and it's $40,000, a little over $40,000. In discussions, a big decrease is due to their construction. They lost a lot of memberships and obviously COVID-19 as well. So I've gone through the report. I did find some errors, some duplications. To be completely honest, there are a lot of people who went from like a family to an adult. Looks like that's what happened a lot. So trying to reduce expenditures there. So they need to clean that up a little bit. Teresa's out this week on vacation, but we'll get that cleaned up next week and submit it probably in the first board meeting in September. Also next week when Teresa's in, we'll talk about the lump sum payment moving forward, and I'll be able to provide an update on that hopefully the next Public Works meeting.
Great. Any questions about the cooperative payment? Okay. Is that it, Eric?
Yep, that's it.
Great.
Now.
All right, let's move to 7C, planning and development.
The only thing I'll add under my report this evening that's also been related to the flooding and an event for the week was what happened around the high school construction site. And so I just wanted to let the committee know that our inspectors were over there this week. We worked with the superintendents again on the job sites. Everybody was very responsive, very cooperative. So we rolled back out the SWIP, or the stormwater pollution prevention plan. So everything, again, now around the construction site should be in accordance with their SWIP plan. And so again, if we have the rainfall, the rain's still going to roll, but there should be certainly much better results in terms of the mud and the debris, and it should definitely help keep everything cleaned up around there. So that's all I had.
Yeah, Nancy.
Just to let the committee know, that was a source of significant conversation at our Ward 1 meeting, and the sort of the water and then ongoing issues that we've had with the construction. And there was some hope that when construction happens for the elementary schools, that those neighbors will not be as negatively impacted. So I know our ordinances and rules are the same, but maybe if going in, everybody's aware of some of the issues that happened with the high school so that they don't repeat themselves with the elementary schools. So that was the hope of some of the Ward 1 residents.
Good point. Okay, if there's no more questions, then we'll move, nothing on the consent agenda. We'll move into old business, near and dear to my heart, the pathway between Bridgeport and White Avenue. All right, Eric, I think you're up.
I am, thank you. So we're providing the update on the pathway. Just kind of a quick reminder, what TWM found was the pathway between Bridgeport and White was that there is a 15-foot wide service alley in the original plat that's still in effect. So we do have that 15 feet to work with, but there are several encroachments in the area. So those are kind of the concerns of what we're looking at. So when we looked at it, we found that all 4 property owners surrounding that pathway encroach on the service alley somewhere to 0.7 feet to 6.8 feet. On the White side, they seem to be the worst. It's 5 and 6.8 respectively. There's 2 trees in that pathway. The northern tree closest to Bridgeport is situated on the right-hand side of the tree. There's about 6 feet of clearance from the tree to the east side of the service alley. And then the tree right in the middle, the southern tree, there's 2.6, 2 feet 6 inches on one side, 2 feet 11 on the other. So there's really not much path around there. We did find 8 feet of clearance between the alleys. So, you know, when we talked about the 7 feet respectively, that's probably the smallest point, and then it does wide up in other points. There's either landscaping or brush and weeds on either side of the current pathway. So either one, if we go like a 5-foot pathway, we'd have to figure out how to maintain the stuff on the side. And most importantly, the urban forester evaluated the tree. He said, and depending on what we do, we might be able to keep that tree. So we basically looked at a wide range. I talked to Dan and his staff and my staff and looked at things we could do. And so there's a lot of different options. There's wood chips. We could just wood chip the path every year. We can put it atop the current pathway. It would not be ADA accessible at all. It would, we could keep the trees. So that would kind of be the pros and cons of that one. And every year we'd have to come back and probably replace or top dress the wood chips. We also would lose wood chips during heavy rains. It'd wash out unless we put some sort of border around it and encase it within that border. But then you'd have the stuff on the other side. You could do minus rock, which is a little bit more sturdy. But again, it would not, you put it on top of the current pathway. It again would not be ADA accessible, but you could keep the trees. So we had that one. There's a washout issue on that one. There is asphalt. So we could demolish the current pathway and then put asphalt in. And so it depend on if you want it to be ADA accessible, we could do that with asphalt, but you'd have to remove both the trees. Rubberway, which is like the rubber path that's on Pine Avenue as part of that sidewalk with a rock base. Again, we'd have to demolish the pathway. It could be ADA accessible if we remove both the trees. And finally, there's concrete, very similar concrete path with a rock base. Current pathway would be demolished. We could make it ADA accessible if we move the trees. So if we want to make the pathway ADA accessible, you also have to probably do a topographical survey to make sure we are able to get the tolerances right for whoever does the work. And that is currently in TWM's contract. If we wanted them to do that, I listed the not to exceed, and then we'd have to remove both the trees. About $5,200 for tree removal for both those tree and stump removal if we did that. So basically, those are options very quickly, but wanted to let you know, or the question that we had primarily is, how do we want to handle encroachment issues? Do we want to get the whole 15-foot wide path? Do we want to leave residents where they're currently encroaching, which would narrow down the pathway? Should the pathway be ADA accessible? And what materials would we use? So that's kind of the informational memo. As I did say, if we do the work, the urban forester suggested if we want to keep the trees, to do that between October and March, because that's when those trees are dormant and would have a better chance of surviving.
All right. Yeah, Jeff, go ahead. I have questions.
Yeah, no, has everyone seen or walked this path? And if not, I have a video that I took today. If you guys want me to share my screen, I can show it. So you can familiarize yourself with what exactly we're talking about.
That would be great, because I told Brandon after when this came up a couple meetings ago, I went to find the path, I couldn't find it. So I'd love to see it.
Shelley, can I share the screen? Share content? Okay. Hang on one sec then. Let me see if I
Should be able to.
figure out. Let's see.
This is a new age in public works,
Yeah.
right? This is like
Okay, so this is the can everybody see that?
Nope.
Okay, hang on one second. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
All right, so that is the tree, the tree that's probably our biggest issue. As you can see, it's right in the middle of the path, and this is from White Avenue going towards Bridgeport. I want to see if I can, for some reason it didn't pull up my video, so hang on one second. Let me see if I can share screen. Zoom, start broadcast. Okay. Can you guys see what I'm doing here?
Yep.
All right, so this is from White Avenue, walking the neighbors adjacency of the driveway there. You can see they've got it. What's that?
Their driveway is actually encroaching onto the
right
pace, but
exactly. Then you come to the asphalt, which is obviously very broken up. You have to be really careful to navigate through around it. And then it, I mean, the asphalt is just aged, obviously, but it's a pretty narrow path. That's the second tree that we're talking about on the left. And then it comes pretty close to the planter boxes of I didn't look at the house numbers, but the house on Bridgeport. And then it kind of just curves into the one, I guess, sidewalk that is on Bridgeport, on the south side of Bridgeport. So that's what we're looking at. Everybody get a good chance of seeing that? Do you want me to play it again?
Could you
I think
please?
you got it up, unless somebody else wants it. That was awesome, though, by the way. Good idea.
All right. Bola, did you want me to play it again?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Hey, can we utilize this sidewalk?
That is part of our I would guess that is part of our, what the city owns, right?
We do own I would assume we own the concrete. Obviously, if you look, it's very similar to what the driveway is. There is history of the city of doing work for residents, so maybe the sidewalk in the driveway was done at the same time. It's currently not ADA accessible, so it goes back again to the accessibility aspect of it.
Is one of the trees that would have to go that tree right there on the left?
Yes.
So yeah, I'll back it up. You've got this electrical pole as well, right there to the right. It does have a light. Eric, I don't know if it works, if it's functioning. There's a rusty light that's on the pole itself.
Yeah. I do not know the answer, honestly.
And then you have that other tree just to the left. And so you can see their fence is kind of even falling down a little bit next to the pole there. And you can see the weeds and growth.
It's right about there where I got the 8-foot measurement right before the tree.
Oh, right here?
Yeah.
So Eric, I have a couple questions, and I guess I'll go. I mean, so the ADA requirement is that the walkway has to be at least 3 foot wide, correct?
Yes.
With some
36
caveats.
inches.
It can be the minimum of 3 feet as long as you have 5 foot or 6 foot every certain amount, right? So if we were able to get a 3 foot path around the southern tree, there would be no reason to take that tree down.
Correct.
And we're at 2 foot 11 inches on the one side with the chain link fence, so we're only 1 inch short. I know it's tight, and if there's an encroachment on that fence, if we enforce the encroachment on that fence, then it's possible we could get enough width and keep the tree alive.
Yeah, if we enforce the encroachment, we'd have more room on both sides. The wood fence and the chain link fence both encroach. So we would have more room on one side or the other.
And I don't understand the rationale why we think the northern tree would have to come down if we were doing something for ADA compliance. I mean, it seems like just
I'm sorry, when I was talking about doing the full pathway, we could probably, you're right, we could keep the northern tree and just go narrow there and then spread back out every few feet, like you said.
And then were you thinking that, so the sidewalk / driveway on the southern side on White, in your calculations or your assumptions, were you keeping that in place of where it was? Because I went and measured that with an inclinometer, and it's too steep for ADA compliance.
Yeah, I did not get out there and fully measure it, but just based on visual cues, it looked like it was too steep. So if we went fully ADA, you'd have to dig it out and basically dig out the whole pathway so that you can make sure you have the right incline throughout the whole pathway. So that would probably that side would lower than where it currently is.
And then I guess is if we only touch the stuff that's asphalt now, so you left the sidewalk where it is, so since that's kind of grandfathered in, I guess, on ADA compliance, and we made the rest of it ADA compliant, is that a potential option?
I'd have to double check, because I think if you're going ADA, you'd have to do the whole thing. You can't just do 90% of it ADA and then leave the last part that was. Now, again, because this isn't a official sidewalk or pathway, we don't have to make it ADA accessible. It's just whether or not we feel like it should be ADA accessible, because we're basically creating this connection. There is ADA pathways from Bridgeport up to Brentwood and back down to White. But again, it depends on what we want to do.
Hey, Bola, you're on mute.
Sorry, can't get this thing straight. We have ADA inclusion coordinator,
Yes.
and she has reviewed and walked all our pathways and issued a report a couple of years ago. And she has called out areas where we need to come into compliance with the ADA Act. Therefore, I don't want to question what Eric just said, but I'd like to hear her opinion about the statement he just made.
That's fair. And if we have that resource, I think we should use it very much, instead of trying to pontificate on ADA. I'll tell you, my opinion is keep those trees there, even if it causes maintenance costs to go up, even if it makes the trail a little squirrely. I mean, those are beautiful big trees. And if we don't have an unbelievably compelling reason to go for it, the one resident I have talked to that is encroaching with the wooden fence, she was totally open to whatever we needed to do to get that path back. She's the one that's concerned because she's watching people walk on it and they're tripping and falling, and you can't push a stroller. I don't know. Am I allowed to make a motion?
The chair usually doesn't,
I know.
but you can guide.
Well, I would suggest a motion that we reach out to the ADA coordinator to get a read on it of what we should do with the existing sidewalk that's in good shape, honestly, and see what we could do to keep those 2 trees and be an ADA compliant for the, I guess, the rest of it.
I have a question. On the ADA, the current, I guess the question that I have is, if we make that cut through ADA, does it have to connect to additional, everything that then it touches be compliant with ADA, or else it doesn't really matter? Because I doubt the incline that goes from White Avenue down to the Rogers Parkway or Swim Club Lane, I doubt that's ADA just from a grade standpoint.
It is not.
I doubt White is. I doubt the Bridgeport, the southern sidewalk on Bridgeport is ADA either. I'm all for ADA. I just don't want a small little chunk that we make a whole big deal about that connects to no other ADA sections of the area without going and doing some major overhauls to a lot of things. So I guess that's the question I have is, are we arguing, are we contemplating about making something ADA compliant that is connected to no other ADA compliance?
Yes, Steve?
I didn't think we own that little section that goes down to the swim club. I thought that was on private property.
A portion of it is, we are trying to work with the resident to see if they'll give us that or give us a very cheap easement for that piece of what part of it is on their property.
But if we leave it private, then doesn't that solve the problem? I mean, if we leave it private, if the owner has no problem with just letting people walk on it, why do we have to make it ADA accessible?
If I may interject, I think we need to go back and look at the report that our inclusion coordinator provided the city. My understanding of how ADA Act works is that once you start making these kind of improvements, you've got to bring everything into compliance. Eric, I see you shaking your head. But
Yes.
we can definitely ask that question of our coordinator.
Yeah, I talked to Terry all
I'd like to make a motion that we approach our coordinator, ADA compliance coordinator, and find out what we're up against here as it relates to this path and the surrounding areas.
I'll second the motion.
Great, we have a motion by Alderman Gould and second by Alderwoman Parker Tice. Any discussion on it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Need a roll call.
All opposed? Nay. Okay. All right, 9B, additional surveying locations throughout Brentwood.
Yeah, so at the one of the previous Public Works committees, when we talked about the findings of TWM, we were asked to look at some other properties throughout the city that might could use property research and boundary, just kind of these things that really are kind of out there that we don't know much about. And so we came up with a list of them. One is Area A's, an apparent alley from Mount Calvary Church to McGrath Elementary School. You know, Alderman Parker Tice talked about that alleyway specifically to Parkridge, but it actually goes all the way to McGrath. So it's a little bit longer than what I thought. Letter B is an apparent alley east of 8817 Moritz. And you can kind of see that in the exhibit. C is a apparent alley from Swim Club Lane to Hanley Industrial Court, which I believe used to be a road at one point. When I was doing my research, it actually used to be a road to get to Hanley Industrial. D is this apparent easement or alley between 88 or 8225 Manchester and 2656 Salem. Area E is apparent easement between Lawn Avenue and South Swan Circle. We have a 2524 Melvin Avenue, which is basically between Melvin and Oak Tree Park, which has been brought or questioned to me a couple times of who owns that and things like that. And I've done as much research as I can and can't figure it out. So it might be good to get someone else to be able to figure it out. And then last was what was discussed at the last meeting, the alley between Manderley and Bremerton. So those were the different areas that Dan and I identified. And then I kind of gave you the costs for each one. TWM did provide a property and boundary survey cost and topographical cost. I don't believe we would need a topographical survey in any of those areas. So that would reduce the cost there. So we had $70,000 in the budget this year that we left in. We did not reduce any of that for cost containment because we're still working on this project. The basic scope so far was 44,000 and some change, which leaves a little bit over 25.5 if we want to do any of this work. So just as a reminder, in June 21st, motion is made to move forward with the work on Area G specifically if we still want to do that. And then Alderwoman Parker Tice talked about Area A. And since I said I've had a lot of questions about that hillside, I would include Area F, which would bring the cost of 370, which is within the budget. So that's the recommendation if we want to move forward with those three, and then we can do the other ones maybe another year, or we can don't have to do any of them. So that's just what we were brought up, and be able to answer any questions.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve.
I would not want to shelf. I agree if this is all we have budgeted, doing the three that Eric has mentioned, but I'll even submit it when we have budget requests for next year. I mean, these are possible assets to the city, and I think that's our responsibility, if these are assets, to identify them. If they're non-performing assets, then we need to unload them. But I would definitely want to continue these surveys maybe into next year for the ones that we don't approve tonight. Just my comment.
Is there a motion in there, Steve?
Yeah, motion to forward onto the board areas A, F, and G for further survey work.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we got a motion by Steve and second by Nancy.
Could I just have a comment on this whole project, if I could? Thank you. This has been very helpful. It's come up just since you did the reporting a couple months ago, the path between Park Ridge and Whitehall, and then also the path between Yorkshire Court Lane and York Hills. I've had different neighbors ask me about them, and then I knew who owned them and who was responsible, and it was just sort of like, oh, okay. So this is a great project. So thank you for the time you all put in to doing it.
Hey, Eric, I have a question.
Always good to know what you own.
Hey, are these surveys, where are they updated in the plat books or something, so that, these nice surveys that we're having done, and I agree there's a lot of value, that they're not just lost to the winds of time, that 10 years from now we're not having the survey done again?
I'll talk to TWM to see if they actually go back to the plat book or not. We obviously get everything, so we have electronic copies of this whole thing. We've put it together in a database, so we have it at the very least. But I will talk to TWM about the plat book question.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, following up on that, you look at the one on Salem, connecting Salem and Manchester. It's a small strip of land, but I could just see a developer someday eating that up, and we never know about it. That's the type of thing that I think needs to be recorded. The same with the one on Moritz. If there's ever redevelopment along Brentwood Boulevard, it would just go by the wayside. And I think there's some money, there's some value that's public money that we need to be aware of. So, just my comment.
And we can easily budget the rest of them into next year's budget.
Yeah.
Maybe not easily, but we can put it in next year's budget.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor of Alderman Lockmiller's motion to forward this on to the board, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay. Easy peasy. Okay, let's move into new business. 10A, youth programming opportunity.
So again, I'm going to be talking a lot tonight. I apologize. So we were working with Richmond Heights, kind of with like the senior programming We had a conversation with myself and the director of Richmond Heights that if one of our senior programmers ever left, maybe be beneficial to combine that and have one person run that programming. We kind of had the same conversation about youth programming. I don't know if that's one I'd want to give up, but because we're trending younger in the community, we want to make sure we engage the kids as much as possible, obviously. But the director of Richmond Heights called me because they lost their youth programmer during those last couple months. And so they wanted to know if we'd be interested in taking it over. So basically it would entail expanding their youth programming and in addition to offering programs in Richmond Heights and Maplewood. So we'd just be taking on a little bit extra programming. Staff believes we can do that. The benefit to it would be, much like the senior programming, they'd be responsible for paying half of the youth programmer salaries and benefits. We thought the best thing to do is just basically said they would take care of senior programming. They get the revenue, do the expenditures from those. We would take youth programming, revenue and programming. The net is very similar for both, so it'd be almost a wash. And basically, we could terminate the senior programming agreement, which would save the city about $39,000 a year. So that's what we would like to do.
Any questions? So Eric, just for clarification, even though we're terminating the agreement, basically the construct of having one coordinator work for both cities is still happening on the seniors.
Correct.
So if people see we're terminating, nothing's really going to change from their perspective.
No.
Of it, and it's just a more efficient way of doing it.
Correct.
Do we need to take this? I assume this goes to the board.
I don't know, honestly, Bola.
It's a change. It's a significant program change, I would imagine.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. It'd be under consent.
Yeah.
Resolution will be simple.
So it looks like we're looking for a motion to take this to the big board.
I'll make a motion to terminate the Senior Citizen Recreation Programming Services Intergovernmental Agreement and allow staff to assume the youth programming for the Park Cooperative.
Can I get a second out there?
Second.
Great. Got the motion by Alderwoman Parker Tice, second by Alderman Lockmuller. Any questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Oh. That sounded like an aye.
It was
Okay.
just slow on the mute button.
Can be or not to be? Cul-de-sac.
All right, cul-de-sac maintenance. I'm taking this one as well. We just want to look or get approval to work with Public Works to help maintain those cul-de-sacs in possibly a new way. And so the Parks and Recreation Department maintains 11 cul-de-sacs throughout the city. I listed them in the memo. And obviously, if you look at those pictures, they're really difficult to maintain due to the continuous tire damage. Cars, trash trucks, and snowplows have difficulty navigating the cul-de-sacs due to limited space and then also parking, residential parking around the cul-de-sac. So basically, these things take a beating. They don't look very nice. Most of them don't look very good. And we're wondering if there's a different way we could do it. So we came up, again, Dan and I had a lot of conversation about this. And what we came up with was a few options, which was we had large boulders around the circles, basically helping reduce the amount of damage. Obviously, by doing that, you're risking the fact of cars, trash trucks, plows hitting those boulders. And so that's probably not the best way. We didn't think it was the best way of doing it. Install a 6-inch curb around the cul-de-sacs. The ones that actually have that 6-inch curb seem to have less damage. Now, there is still damage from time to time. They'll drive over it. That also has a possibility of creating some tire damage as well. So we figured that might not be the best way of going as well. We could remove the cul-de-sacs and replace them with additional concrete or asphalt paving. I use Fawn Court as an example. There is a couple issues with that, is that some of the circles have lights. I think one even has a fire hydrant in it. So obviously we'd have to either remove those or do something with that. Also, I mean, it's not much, but those things do help water runoff and help with water assumption. So it would increase stormwater. I know we've been talking about stormwater a lot, so I hate to increase stormwater anywhere. So that might not, again, be the best option. So another one is replacing it with the rubberway material. Now, I'm not sure the aesthetics of it. It might not look the nicest to go from grass to kind of this rubberway material, but would withstand the weight of the trucks. It could allow the city to keep the lighting in the fire the cul-de-sac. Would allow for water absorption, and Dan's staff could do the installation. So, when Dan and I talked, we thought maybe we could do one in the rubberway, or maybe a smaller one, and see if that would work, and see what we thought, and do it as a test pilot, and go from there. Or another options are, we could make this circle smaller, which was not in the memo, but I just thought of later, is like just reduce the size so that it gives the trucks and cars more room. But we're just trying to figure out a way to make those things look a little bit nicer around the city.
Yeah, Steve.
I have a feeling, especially the ones off Salem, if I try to do anything different to those, I'll probably be buried in one of them. A lot of the people have kind of taken it upon themselves to do a little bit of decorating. And I think Barnstable, one of the neighbors planted a tree there in memory of her mother. And that one is kind of a triangular shaped circle. If maybe you could take the corners off of it and make it round, I think there'd be less damage there. It's a rather big island. But
Yeah, that's the biggest one.
I'm changing any of these, or the ones in my ward. I just don't, especially Radley Court. They've done, even beyond that picture that's in there, someone's done a lot of landscaping and mulching in there on their own. So I would really hesitate on touching any of mine in my ward.
Well, so that stuff now is Karen Birch, our horticulturalist, has taken on most, if not all, of those.
No, she's done a great job then.
She's wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I almost wonder, there's such a disparity between the sizes of some of these. You have some that are maybe, that look like maybe they're 6 to 8 feet in diameter. You have others that are 14 to 16 feet, if not more, 20 feet. I guess one thing that I'm wondering is, do we look at is there a way to look at putting maybe a border of the rubberway material, but still leaving a lot of the grass, and that gives you a little bit more of an area for some slop where somebody might cut over but not continue to cause ruts and problems without having to cover the entire, on some of these bigger ones, without covering the entire one. Now, some of these smaller ones, I could see where you might want to, if those are truly a problem, then we may look at, okay, do we repave it and then put some planter in the middle that doesn't take as much space, that creates some beautification, but not really the maintenance problems that you have. So I think, I'm in favor of not an extreme measure of removing them altogether, but doing something that mitigates the issues that you have now.
Sure. I will say, with the ones that have trees, the idea with the rubberway was to kind of do a tree well so we could keep the trees. I believe Dan actually brought up the idea of doing maybe the outside strip 6 inches to a foot of a strip. We could look into that one as well. What we could do,
I think even a 2 to 3 foot strip around some of the bigger ones, would still, I think it would aesthetically look okay. You could do it the rubberway. You could do whatever color you want, right?
Yes.
So you could make it kind of look like anything you'd want, to create an aesthetic issue or look for it.
What we could do is go back, Dan and I with staff could go back and take a look at each one individually and maybe come back with a recommendation for each one. Some we might not do anything with, some we might do that little strip with. We could do that if that would be better.
Yeah, I would say, speaking for Ward 2, number one, if you mess with the Douglas Court one, we don't have anywhere to put our block party sign. But the Mary Kay one, I do get complaints about that crossing, and I think the road is very narrow, and that's a huge island, and there's just nothing that prevents people from just cutting through there. Would it be worth us to pick one? If we're gonna do an experiment, I do actually like that aspect of, like, we try it a little bit and get feedback. I mean, I don't think we want to touch a lot of these, but then looking at these pictures, some of them are in really bad shape. I mean, maybe do we want to propose one to the team that maybe kind of formulate their ideas a little bit better of?
Sure. I mean, I think depending on if there's a specific treatment you want, we could do kind of like that little, we look at like Helen or Laverne, where there's a lot of damage right on the outside, but the inside seems pretty good. We could do kind of that strip of the rubberway around the outside, leave the inside, with the trees and the trees and whatever's in there right now, and do that as a test subject.
Yeah, almost
We could
wonder if we do.
Mary Kay would be another good example of one we could try as well.
Yeah, I would almost do, if we're going to do kind of an experiment and test to see how we like them, you almost have to look at like taking Bedford Avenue or Bedford Drive and then one of the bigger ones that creates a lot of the damage. So then you have a small example and a larger example of how you might treat it differently. Bedford Drive also looks like it has a light there just to the tree there, so it gives you an opportunity to see how that might that process might look or work, leaving the infrastructure in place. So I almost wonder if we're going to do an experiment, do it on two, one bigger one small.
Bedford, that's what the experimental solar lights, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That one looks the best of any of them.
Yeah.
Either way,
minus the sort of bricks that are just haphazardly placed around,
Either way, I'm going to let the new guy make this motion.
So you're not buried in one? Well, I say I make a motion that Eric and Dan come explore the option of a variable treatment for one recommendation for small cul-de-sacs and one recommendation for large cul-de-sacs. And then we reevaluate at that point.
And I'm thinking that I should make the second. So.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions, conversation? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, 10C, on-call engineering services.
That one is mine.
All right.
So the new ordinance that is under review with the Board of Aldermen for stormwater control, this committee well knows that part of that ordinance is going to require a stormwater infill development permit for, several projects now here in Brentwood. So part of the review process of that permit is going to be looking at the actual drainage calculations, looking at how they're going to address the stormwater situation and what types of BMPs they're going to use in order to control that extra impervious surface runoff. So that review, as we have discussed in this committee, would be conducted or would be completed by an on-call engineer. And so we undertook that process, Eric, Dan, and I. We sent out an RFQ. It's been a couple of months ago. We had 5 submittals that we received. We had 3 firms that we interviewed. All the interviews really went well. I mean, I really think any of the consultants could probably do a bang-up job on doing these stormwater permit reviews and other stormwater related issues. But our recommendation was to recommend that Gonzalez companies be held on retainer for this purpose, for these engineering services. And really reasons being, first, I mean, they are a firm actually here in Brentwood. They've been around since 1999. I think both in their proposal and in the interview, the 3 of us all felt comfortable that they just really focused on what exactly the city was requesting. They do have a very good reputation in the stormwater field, so I think that's a big plus. They just walked us through how they saw the whole process would work with the development permit review, which I thought was good. They have worked with MoDOT, they work with MSD. A lot of their contracts have already been for OMCI projects. So I think that's a good connection as we move forward, some of the things that we would be looking at here in the community. And the firm also currently does review some site plans and other stormwater permits like this for other municipalities. So it seemed like a good fit. As I said, everybody I thought really did go interview well and responded well to the RFQ. This would not really be any expense to the city unless, again, it was looking at a stormwater issue that we would commission. Then a scope of work would have to be written, and that, of course, would be through committee and then presented to the entire board. They were comfortable, if we go with this firm, they were comfortable with what was set up in the ordinance, and that fee, again, would be passed on to the permittee. And so any improvements that would cause more than 500 square feet of impervious surface would be a $1,000 fee. Less than 500 square feet would be the $500 fee. And Gonzalez did say what would be included in that plan review would be the initial submittal and the review, and then a write-up of exactly what would maybe be lacking or what would not be compliant, and then a resubmittal they would review all for that initial fee. So if there would be just like problems that you had maybe a really poor application, at that point then it would be, the fee would then be on an hourly basis. Really all three firms that we interviewed kind of had that same structure, so it just kind of seems what the engineering firms would suggest. So so we thought, we think this is a good fit. Their rates were competitive, so that is what our recommendation is to this committee this evening.
Okay, any questions? I think we're looking for a motion to take this to the big board on the consent agenda, right?
So moved.
Correct.
Second.
Yep.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, discussion?
I just got a general question. Lisa, I know on RFP, you know, we give for a Brentwood company, we give like a 3% threshold. I don't know what the term for it is when there's, you know, in the bidding process. Is there anything like that in an RFQ?
I don't know. I don't know if my other, if anyone else could answer that, if they're familiar with that. Oh, Eric?
I know in the past we gave additional points for people in the RFP process if they're a Brentwood resident. We, as well as if they had history with the city. We talked about that when we talked about playing studio, and we've purposely took that out so we wouldn't show favoritism.
Oh. All right, thanks.
This is a professional services, right? So it's not a lowest bidder thing anyway.
Correct.
Right, and that's what, yeah, I'm sorry, that's what I thought the question was like there was some kind of break or something because of that. But yeah, so the next step would be that we will go ahead and negotiate, write up an agreement, and then take that resolution back, the agreement and the resolution back to the full board.
All right, any other questions? Okay, all those in favor of taking this to the big board?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we're moving on to 10D, garage doors.
Yep, that's fine. This one's pretty straightforward. I actually have the next two items, but as you know, there's garage doors that used to be for the former fire bays at City Hall. Those two doors are pretty much deteriorated. They're wood, and it's showing stress cracking and a bunch of rotten areas. We've patched them up in the past on the inside. What the RFP included was that these would be of non-wood materials, so whether it be fiberglass or aluminum. They pitched the idea of aluminum with steel frame. They're insulated, they have glass, so architecturally they'll look like what's there. They'll come with 2 new operators. You know, they'll get rid of the old ones. We did get 2 bids, and you can see there's a difference quite a bit between the 2 of them, but we've used both companies to do repairs on those doors and at Public Works. So far the lowest is Zumwalt. and the recommendation was to go with them and include the additional, or optional, I should say. They added a little bit for, I'm trying to think of the words for it. It's basically just to strengthen the doors because they said they're heavy. So it's only $350 for the two of them. So we thought that seemed like a wise idea since they do get operated from time to time. So it's $11,185 was the recommendation with the alternate.
Any questions for Dan?
I have a question. Yeah, Dan, what, do we need the doors anymore since it's not being used? I know that we temporarily sometimes use for kind of an overflow, I think for the fire department to come, store a vehicle or two. But I guess the question is, do we need both bay doors or, is there future use for some of the, at least one of the areas that maybe wouldn't need a garage door?
Yeah, I don't know what it would cost to frame one out, like enclose it, but we do actually use both of them. The one at the northern end is actually used primarily for deliveries. So whenever City Hall gets like a pallet of paper, the truck backs in, lowers its Tommy gate, pulls the pallet off, wheels it in there. There's storage shelves in there. I know if there's like an ice storm, they'll bring vehicles in there like planning and development so they don't get ice shut. And so we can clean the parking lot. So I would say it'd be nice to have both of them rather than close one in. That's my opinion.
Okay.
And they'll have scouting for food and other events there. I mean, it'd be nice if we could repurpose it later.
Any other questions? Okay, so I think we're looking for a motion here to proceed with Zumwalt.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Nancy, second by Steve, I think. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, 10E, Brentwood bound Deer Creek Connector Phase 1 bid recommendation.
Yeah, this one is for the flood mitigation Phase 1, and eventually there'll be a Phase 2, but this is the larger of the two flood mitigation phases. Navigate Jacobs put together the bid packages. We advertised those according to the code, and we received 7 bids back on July 30th. Of those 7 bids, you can see there's quite a grouping of, say 4 of them that were pretty close, and then the other 3 were a little bit further apart. And at least 4 of them were underneath the engineer's estimate. The engineer's estimate was like 19.2 million. So you can see that our number 1 and our number 2 pick were well below it. We did interviews with those 2 firms, so Castle and Keeley. We interviewed them as a group. Had input from MSD. MSD said that both firms are qualified as deep sewer contractors. So they haven't had any issues with either of them. So it boils down to, it's a really tight race. So you can see the difference between number 1 and number 2, with just the base bid was just, roughly 25,000, I believe, dollars. Yeah, $25,426. So it's really close. And then when you add in the alternates, there's alternates 1, 2, and 3. The alternates included, extra years of maintenance for alternate 1 and alternate 2. And then alternate 3 was a concrete trail. So that's the other alternate 3. It's still L. Keeley is actually a lower, more responsive bidder. So it's $17,192,574 if you add the base plus the 3 alternates. And then we were also looking as a recommendation to put in there a not to exceed amount of 10% for any change orders in case we encounter rock or any hazardous materials that we didn't know about whenever we did the geotechnical, so that we don't have to come back and if we were stopped because we don't have a high enough threshold. We'll still bring back a change order, explain to you what the change order is, but we wanted to have a little bit of contingency in case it goes over the base, or the base amount plus the alternate. I don't know if you have any questions.
Alderman Parker Tice.
So I have a question about the 12-foot concrete trail. Is that the trail that back in January we approved funding for design of a trail in that phase 1 part? Is this that trail?
It is, and it also, the concrete will provide a nice stable base so that MSD can actually go back there and maintain their manholes and things like that. Or if Parks needs to do a cleanup, or cut grass, you can actually drive a truck and a trailer on it and not rut up the grass, especially with all the rain we've been having. You'll be able to take this path and do your maintenance activities and drive back off of it and hopefully not track any mud. So it gives it a more stable, useful material. Concrete, I would say, probably lasts you at least 25 years or more, without any real maintenance issues, maybe some crack sealing.
Is this comparable to the path materials and the construction that is happening on the rest of Great Rivers Greenway? Knowing that this likely would be tied into it at some point, is it going to be consistent?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. We can look into it, or I can ask Navigate. I don't want to speculate without having looked at the plan.
Maybe Eric knows.
Yeah, for the most part, GRT trails are either concrete or asphalt. I'd say it's probably 60-40 concrete, just because you have the longer life expectancy on concrete.
Yep.
Hey, is there a sense of urgency on this? I mean, this is a $17 million proposal. It seems like we should have a first and a second reading on this.
There is, if you were to talk to Craig.
Right. Yeah. You wanted to give them notice to proceed right away. So
I'm not making it up.
right.
I got a question.
Yeah, Steve.
Well, under finance and operations, the second paragraph, where we've got a lot of that MSD reimbursement. So once again, I understand that we bear the expense, but then that comes back to us after those MSD projects are completed within the scope of this work, correct?
Right. Actually, we had a meeting earlier this week trying to reach an agreement with MSD as to when they will be cutting the city's check. So it's not necessarily when the project is over. I think they're supposed to cut a check for maybe 35% once the board approves the contract. And then the balance will be upon conclusion, I think, something like that. So it's not that we would upfront all of the money. They're supposed to provide us, a check periodically. But we can clarify that on Monday, and that could be part of the presentation.
Because if I'm looking, if we budgeted, the engineer budgeted 19 million, and with the 10% contingency, that's about 17 million. So we're under what they budgeted for this item.
That's correct.
Then you've got the reimbursements.
Right.
So the scope of this work is really a $12.6 million project, right?
Right. Right.
All right. I just want to get my mind around these grants and reimbursements.
We'll update that part of Dan's memo in board docs for the meeting on Monday, so it will answer the questions you're asking right now.
Okay.
And the schedule's like roughly 700 days, so it spans multiple years. So it's not like you're going to get all this done. If you started in September of 20, it's not like it's going to be done in early 21. It's going to span all throughout 21 and into 22.
Yeah.
So you won't be spending all that money in 1 year, I guess is what I'm getting at. It's not like you'd have to write a $19 million check
One
or
time.
17 or 12, it's multiple budget cycles.
Right.
And I guess and MSD signed off on Keeley being a contract they prefer for this type of work, not just the whole scope, but the things that we're getting reimbursed for.
Right, they've used them. In fact, Keely's actually working on the soccer stadium. They're the general contractor. So, I mean, they've got a lot of experience with grading. So does Castle. You know, both Castle and Keely have been approved as deep depth sewer contractors. You know, this, because it is a large diameter pipe and it's pretty deep in the ground, they have to go through some special certification with MSD, and they're both in good standing with them.
Okay.
Can't go wrong with either of them.
Great. Thank you.
Would this be a resolution that goes to the board? Is that?
That's the way I have it written for now. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're looking for a motion to take this up.
I'll make a motion to recommend Keely Contracting for the construction in the Brentwood Bound Flood Mitigation Phase 1 with an additional 10%, what do we call that?
Contingent.
Change order included, I guess. How's that sound?
Right.
To the full board.
Second.
Okay, we have a big motion. Okay, any discussion? Okay, I guess all those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, is that the biggest resolution in the history of Brentwood?
I'm sure it is.
We spent longer talking about trees and a pathway.
Yeah, right.
No kidding.
No turning back now. Brentwood Bound is going. So
Almost.
I'll be excited
Okay.
to see that dirt come out of there. That'll really get
Yeah.
people going. See that stuff moving.
Yeah. Okay, 10F, Ameren, Missouri Electrical Vehicle Charging Incentive Program. It's a mouthful.
Yeah, that is mine. So basically, we're looking for approval to apply for the Ameren, Missouri EV Charging Incentive Program. This is a program to encourage businesses to install EV chargers. Ameren wants to fund 1,000 EV stations across the state. So we spoke with Ameren representative about a month ago, informed staff we'd be eligible up to 6 level 2 charging ports. So it'd be 3 ports, both of each one. The program covers half of the total project cost, up to $5,000 per port. So we looked at different areas in the parking lot based on the ease of getting it from our electric panel. We chose the spots that were listed in the memo. We then talked to 2 different companies. Ameren basically has 2 different approved companies that will do this work and suggest. So one is IBP. So we met with IBP. They basically did a couple things that were nice. They talked about the fact that they can actually help the city submit the incentive program application. That's part of their service that they provide. And Ameren's already worked with them on a number of them already. So it's basically, I won't say a foregone conclusion, but it's a pretty good chance that you'll get approved if you go through them for the incentive program. They also talked about a federal tax credit. While the city cannot gain the tax credit because since we don't pay taxes, what they do is they basically take the tax credit for the city since they're doing all the work, and then basically cuts the city a check for the amount that we would earn for the federal tax credit. That is done with a lot of things, even done with solar panels, things like that. So it is basically finding a for-profit to take the credit, and then you get reimbursed by that profit or by that company. So they quote with 2 pedestal mounts, which would be 4 charging stations, would cost about $39,000. An estimated savings of, with the estimated savings of the incentive program and a tax credit, the total cost of the city would be $8,500. We also met with VSA. I would just say that, to be honest, it was not a smooth conversation with VSA. It took multiple weeks for them to even come out and schedule an appointment. Then they rescheduled the meeting 3 different times. They don't assist with the incentive program. They don't offer the federal tax credit, and they're also more expensive. So this is something we talked about in our goals this year. we would think it'd be good to be able to offer that. I would be excited because then we can maybe move to an electric vehicle in our fleet as well, that we could have charging here. So it is $8,500. We have 6 months. So if we wanted to wait to September to do the application, that way we could roll it into our 2021 budget. We could do that as well. But it is something I think I would recommend moving forward with.
Yeah, Nancy.
I have a couple questions. So once the chargers are in, assuming we approve it, who does Ameren pay for the electricity, or does the city pay for the electricity?
The city does pay for electricity. From what Ameren says and from what everyone else says, is that it's not much. There's not a great increase to the cost. Everyone's a little bit different, depends on usage, obviously. But they said less than a 5% increase in your bill.
Okay. And then another question on the tax incentives. So if we roll it into next year, are the tax incentives the same? Does the Ameren still have this same program next year, or is it just rolling it into our budget next year, but you're still gonna do all the work?
Yeah, the object would be to try to do the application in September, knowing that we have the 6 months for construction, make sure we work with IBP to make sure that work in their time frame, so that if we wanted to hold off for payment for next year, we could. If we want to do everything this year, we'd probably have to do a budget amendment. I, to be flat honest, don't have $8,500 of savings anywhere in my budget, so it's not something I could pay for myself. But it is something we could use fund balance for if we wanted to, or we could kind of take kind of that 2-year approach or straddle the budget year.
And the tax credit's the same next year, because I know we're actually looking at solar, so I know like next year the tax credit goes down for.
I can double check. I can double check that with IB or IBP. Okay. But the program won't change. They'll have, this program will be set at 5,000 half cost until they install the 1,000. They're still pretty early on. They haven't had many takers on this yet, but I still wouldn't want to wait until January to put in the application.
Yeah. With these programs, they're unknown as if Ameren would have funding to continue it the next year. That's always the unknown. But given the cost that Eric mentioned, out of our entire budget, that seems like a minuscule amount. We should be able to find that. 8,000, I think is what you said.
Yeah, Bola, didn't we put 20,000 in the sustainability budget line item for this year as well anyway?
I think we did. We can check into that. I completely forgot about that.
That was in one. I'll have to pull up the.
Yeah, the budget book.
I'm pretty sure.
Oh, sorry, Nancy. Go ahead. Finish.
No, Steve has his hand raised. I just was talking. I'll wait for Steve.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, Eric, are these 2 dual stations then?
Yes.
I'm wondering if maybe, and I don't know what it does to the cost, if for looks, if it'd be better to move one of them over to City Hall and the one in front of the rec center. Or does that increase the cost because you're running?
Yeah, it would increase the cost. I mean, I could definitely go and ask them about that and say, hey, could we get one charging station here, one charging station at City Hall? Part of the idea is that our cost for running the electric from City Hall, because that's a second tap into a different electrical panel. Let me find their real quick. I wonder.
And I don't have a location off the top of my head. I just, we want to promote sustainability as a board and as a city. I'm just thinking spreading these things around gives that.
It looks like it was 20,000, 19,900 was for the labor to get the electric out to the station. So you'd probably add another $20,000 at least to
wow. Okay.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
But Steve, I think we should someday get one around City Hall. That would be great.
Well, I think it'd almost be probably more of a wall mount, with the parking along the, what side of that? That would be the north side. Because I think maybe someday, we could look at our planning and zoning vehicles, they don't go far. what the cost effectiveness of having electric vehicles as opposed to the gas. I mean, you got to do the numbers, but
Right.
it'd be something to look at in the future. So that's it.
Any other questions? Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, outside of the future potential for city hall fleets or city-owned fleets, how are these being used most? I guess is kind of the big question that I'd like to know, and because that gets to a little bit more of where's the ideal or optimum location of these? Are people coming off the highway knowing that, hey, there's a charging station and they need to get recharged? If so, then the rec center makes sense from a space that we have, but I don't know if rec center is convenient enough to the highway system that we have, the 2 highway systems that are right at our doorstep. So I guess I'm just kind of wondering, will they get used by the folks that have adopted electric vehicles?
I would say that basically the reason we thought about the rec center is that when people come to the rec center, they can obviously use it, and that it is fairly central to the highways. It's not right next to it. It's not in the promenade, obviously, but you're not too far away from 64 or 40 or 170 if someone would go into the network. Amber would promote it where all the different charging stations are. So if people are coming down 170 or down 64, it wouldn't be too far away where they can come out and just basically charge up. Now, I will say that another thing that I looked at was a potential grant from Missouri DNR. We'll send that to me on Tuesday. And basically, Missouri is trying to fill the gaps in Missouri of their charging network. So for this grant, they're only basically predetermined 13 specific sites. And St. Louis isn't one of them. So I think they feel, Ameren feels like there must be something in the St. Louis corridor around the highways that they wouldn't make this a predetermined site. Be eligible for the Missouri DNR grant this round. My hope is that they're doing $3 million this round of a $6 million project. So maybe hopefully in round 2, they might have a St. Louis one. And then if we want to go a different location, City Hall, parks, and somewhere in the, maybe even if we want to talk to Pace and put it somewhere near their properties, that might be something we could do in that second round.
Hey, Bola, were you able to find that 20K? I can't find it right off
No, I can't find it. So we'll regroup after this meeting and
So I think we're looking for potentially a motion to proceed with IPB. I got the letters wrong there. For the 8,000 option and find a way to fund it this year.
yeah, I think we can find a way to fund it.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Great. Motion by Alderwoman Parker Tice and second by Steve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. This is a big day. I was over in Maplewood, kind of jealous of all their electric chargers. So, keeping up with the Joneses. Okay. Item 11. Any citizen comments? Shelley, anything pop in?
We do have one guest not requesting to speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Good meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, great meeting. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, Dan. See you later. We're good to go.